This Week 11 main slate has been oscillating back and forth this entire week. We've got news, we've got notes, we've got injuries, we've got role changes, we've got unconfirmed starters to talk about, and there's a whole lot to dissect. So let's get you set by doing a snake draft live here on FanDuel.com. Welcome on into our snake draft Q&A. That's right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by JJ Zachariason and Brandon Gadula. JJ is the editor-in-chief of numberFire and FanDuel. JJ, happy Taysom Hill Day to you. How you doing?
Well, first off, I'm tilting a little bit at some of the responses that I'm getting on Twitter right now about Taysom Hill. But then also, as we started recording, someone started using their weed whacker outside, so hopefully you guys can't hear that. But that's kind of how my afternoon's going right now.
I thought that it was leaf blower season because there's like a constant hum of a leaf blower at all times.
It might be a leaf blower. That actually makes a lot more sense. Yeah,
but it's required to be going at all times. So it's accepted at this point. Brandon, last week you won our snake draft because of a Hail Mary from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins. I'd been ahead by 10 or so points because of a Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs touchdown. Here, say your piece. Congratulate yourself. Go away. I'm gonna just sit here in silence and sadness for a bit.
I mean, there's nothing to talk about. It was a good roll of the dice. I was tilting because Alvin Kamara scored, and then Josh Allen.
You were tilting because the best player on the slate scored, and you didn't. And then I was like, someone else did.
I was like, look, I'm gonna go up 5-3-2, but then that evaporated in like a second. And then I was like, all right, well. So I think it was like a little bit bittersweet because I already conceded the loss. And then turns out Kyler.
Yeah.
And Nuke.
It was bittersweet for me too because I had a ton of Kyler in daily fantasy and that touchdown was beneficial in that perspective. And then I realized, oh, wait, Brandon had both Kyler and DeAndre on the same team. So a bit less enthused after that. But that does put Brandon up 5-3-2 in our snake draft standings for the year. Again, I have not won since week 3. So we are in a bit of a run.
That's
here,
the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about Taysom Hill? Who cares about DeAndre Hopkins? It's all about me just being the worst snake drafter in the past 10 weeks.
We can have Brandon answer this. Brandon, what's worse, having 2 wins versus 3 wins, but the 3 wins have no win has happened since week 3? Like, who's positioned worse right now, me or Jim? I think it's kind of close.
I would feel worse if I were Jim because I
don't think it's that close personally. You get hope, you get a big head, and then you get that constantly deflated in this crushing feeling every week. So. Yeah. I'd much rather be you right now, personally.
Yeah, I would definitely feel worse if I were Jim.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the constant feeling. That's an evergreen statement. I would always feel worse if I were Jim. Same. Honestly, just same. As you can see above me, we have a timer going down right now. We're going to give away a free ticket into the Week 11 FanDuel Sunday Million Contest. To enter, go to YouTube. Check out the description there on the YouTube for this live stream. Get yourself entered. We're giving it away. At 3:45, we'll announce the winner live here on air. It's a pretty quick thing. Just enter your email. So go to YouTube, check out the description, get yourself entered. A little bit over 11 minutes left to do so. So go do that right now. Before we get into our snake draft for today, I do want to go through this Taysom Hill situation. And JJ, I want to start things off with you because Brandon and I did talk about it a bit on yesterday's podcast. Taysom Hill on FanDuel is tight end eligible. He is $4,500. What you doing with Taysom Hill based on the information we have here on this Friday afternoon?
I think you lock him in at 100% exposure this week. Okay. It's one of those situations where I tend to not spend up at the tight end position to begin with. I think that there's an argument to be made. Like, let's say he was $6,000 instead of $4,500. I think that there's definitely an argument to be made then that fading Hill at that price makes a little bit more sense because you know that his percent roster is going to be so high in tournaments, etc. There's at least an argument. But at 4,500, it's really, really hard for me to just not say, I'm all in. I'm just going with that. I'm not going to even think about the tight end position this week because not only that, but there aren't that great of tight ends on this slate to begin with, right? There's not these very obvious and good tight end alternatives versus Taysom Hill. But realistically, all the news that we got today, outside of Sean Payton actually coming out and naming the starter, the news from Schefter, obviously he dropped said that Taysom Hill was going to start. So if you get a quarterback production, even if it's let's be honest, the production that we're likely going to get from Taysom Hill is going to be very Tim Tebow-esque, more than likely. Not necessarily how he throws the ball, but the kind of stat line he's going to generate. But that's fine for fantasy purposes too. So I expect Taysom Hill to at least get double-digit points in that game at the tight end position. And at $4,500, it's just almost impossible to fade.
And I think the important discussion here with Taysom Hill is not about the floor. It's about the ceiling. And it's not his ceiling. It's the ceiling of other tight ends. Rob Gronkowski was in the perfect lineup on FanDuel last week at tight end with 12.1 FanDuel points. That was the best tight end you could have used on the entire slate. There aren't a lot of tight ends who can burn you for not using them. Therefore, you should use Taysom Hill, take the floor and the ceiling combo he gives you, and just suck it up and figure out the other 8 spots after that. At least that's where I'm at with this. I agree with JJ. Put him in 100% of your lineups, figure out the rest from there. Brandon, what about you? We kind of, I think, came to a consensus yesterday that if we got a word like this, we're just going 100%. Have you deviated from that based on new information?
Not really, no. It comes down to the opportunity cost, and like JJ alluded to, and like you just said, there aren't tight ends. There's not Travis Kelce's not on the slate. A healthy George Kittle's not on the slate. It's Mark Andrews. In my simulations, he's about 10% likely to put up 20 FanDuel points. He's really the only one who can kind of get you 20. The median outcome for Taysom Hill is around 15 to 16. That's very hard to project him. But I think it would be a much better, a tougher conversation if he were quarterback, because then the opportunity cost is such that you might be missing out on Deshaun Watson, but that's not the case. He's a tight end. Right. And I think worst case scenario is, Jameis starts or Jameis takes the majority of the dropbacks. You're just not missing out on a lot at tight end.
Right.
Yeah. So it just feels like a very safe play to lock him in.
Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, I was going to say, the other thing too is that over the last 3 weeks, Taysom Hill's averaged almost 7 rushes per game. So it's not like, even if Jameis starts that you're getting a 0 from Taysom, you're still likely to get some production in some way. And given the fact that this is the tight end position and that, punting tight end is a very common and good strategy to take most weeks, given the state of the position, just makes a ton of sense to just use Taysom everywhere.
Yeah, the first 8 or so perfect FanDuel lineups this year had, I think, no tight ends more than $6,000. So, you should always be trying to spend. JJ talked me into Jacob Hollister last week, and I was, on board with it. We've used much worse options at tight end, and I was on board with that. I thought that was a really good option. I thought that was good. I used Jordan Akins 2 weeks ago. Yeah. We've done worse. And, we're trying to spend as little as possible. We're spending as little while using a guy who will play freaking quarterback. Even when Drew Brees was healthy in week 9, Taysom Hill played 9 snaps at quarterback there. In that game against Tampa Bay, he had a pass attempt and 3 rush attempts in the first half before that game got out of hand. So I say you just plug in Taysom Hill and go from there. For the snake draft, though, Taysom Hill is not at tight end. He is actually at quarterback. So that's definitely going to change things there. We also have to decide, how do we handle the value running backs? Because I think that Kalen Ballage personally is draftable in a snake draft. Even though we're not caring about salary cap, we've got guys who you wouldn't usually consider who are definitely in play here. So we're going to go to the snake draft here and get it set. JJ, you wanted to get us popping here?
Yeah, I'm going to enter. I'm assuming that we're all hoping for the 101 with Dalvin Cook sitting there, right?
Give me Dalvin, baby.
All right, here we go.
And we don't want pick 3.
Entering right now, and your boy got the 101.
Oh, saw it coming.
Oh man! So
come on, I deserved this after a couple weeks ago in the CMC Dalvin Cook week, and I wasn't able to get one of them. I think I deserve this pick right now.
I think you had 3rd last week too, wasn't it? Or was it the?
No, I did.
Oh, okay, okay. Well,
yeah, I got Aaron Jones last week, I think.
Okay, so you get the deserved, the overdue first overall pick. It's no question Dalvin to you, correct?
Yeah, and honestly, I think, not to you're sitting at 2, Jim. I do think Kamara is number 2, but I do worry a little bit about the ambiguity at quarterback for New Orleans. I think that you can make the argument that Jameis is better for Kamara than Taysom is, because we know there's going to be a lot of rushing from Taysom. But I still think Kamara is the 102. I'm just saying that I think it makes it a very easy decision for me with Dalvin Cook.
The other reason I would prefer Jameis start with Kamara is they'll throw more and they'll probably generate more touchdown drives and be a higher scoring game, which is good for Kamara too. So I'd agree with you there. All right. So the snake draft has started. JJ's on the clock here.
There's no correct pick 3, really. It drops off so much.
I took Alvin. So, Brandon, we were talking about this before, how we didn't really know what you do with that third pick. Are you considering a receiver here, or are you just going running back?
I'm considering a receiver. Devontae's not fully healthy, though. I still might go there. Aaron Jones, tough matchup. Derrick Henry, tough matchup. I'm just going to have to kind of panic here.
It's not like we've had a week to get.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did go Devontae.
I like it.
Boy. I'm going to regret this one, but
You going Derrick Henry?
I'm thinking about it. Because if not, I would go Julio. But I know that my running backs are going to get worse. But I'm gonna pull a fast one. I'm gonna pull a fast one here.
Uh-oh.
See what happens.
Okay. So you took away my potential game stack. I can still go Calvin Ridley later, get the Alvin Calvin stack, which is nice. But I am going to go Derrick Henry. The Ravens showed last week they can be beaten a bit on the ground. The Patriots showed that. And I think that Derrick Henry probably straight up deserves to be the third running back on this slate. So that puts it to JJ for 2. You've got Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take Aaron Jones.
Okay.
I actually kind of don't mind that game that much in general.
It's a good game, yeah.
And the other thing too that I really like is I think Phillip Rivers is, from like a season-long perspective, is sort of like a low-key streamer because Green Bay does not get to the quarterback whatsoever. And obviously Indianapolis can protect him well. So I'm looking at maybe wide receiver, but I might just take a little bit of a chance here and look down a little bit. I might go with he's not projected that high. But I'm going to go running back again. I'm going Miles Sanders with my next pick.
Oh, man. That's upsetting because I was going to take Miles Sanders with my pick. I was all prepared. I was like, I don't even have to think about this. JJ's going to go wide receiver. I can just take him and be happy, which means that I have to pick here. And, I don't know what I want here. I could go James Robinson. The matchup is poo. I could go Mike Davis. I think that Mike Davis is in play here. Considering Caleb Balaj, but I actually think that I will go Mike Davis. I have pretty serious concerns about Mike Davis when he's $7,400, but I think in a snake draft, he does make a bit more sense. It's a good situation for the Detroit or for the Panthers facing the Lions. There's a possibility Teddy might play, so I will go begrudgingly Mike Davis there. Brandon, you have 2. You have Devontae, Julio, and Nick Chubb now as your next pick. I should have gone Nick Chubb. Why did I take Davis over Nick Chubb? That was
I didn't want to say anything.
What an idiot. My goodness.
Can
I quit? Can I just exit this?
This is the hardest stake draft we've done all year, though.
I like this one here. Again, I'm just thinking outside the box this week.
Yeah,
that's
fair.
I like it.
So I actually think that there are 3 quarterbacks in play. I was initially thinking of maybe just going to Sean because I was concerned about the drop-up, but I forgot about Herbert. I actually don't care which one I get.
Yeah.
So at wide receiver, I am going to go Calvin Ridley, get the game stack there with Kamara. And that's concerning because I think this game loses a lot of appeal with Taysom Hill starting because it's a bit more rush-heavy focus. But Ridley's really good. I think Atlanta's offense is good. So even if there is a bit reduced play volume, I think that Ridley still makes sense. And again, the Calvin Alvin stack is critical here.
I am going to get Keenan Allen against the Jets, just a high floor, it's a 3-man kind of game. And then I'm also going to go with another high floor player and Terry McLaurin as my next pick.
Mm-hmm. I think that was the right pick there. I would have done McLaurin had he been available to me. But because Brandon picks next for the next 2 picks, I'm going to get a stack in here. And I can say I'm going to get a stack because Brandon already is quarterback. So I can take Will Fuller now. And then I can take Deshaun Watson after Brandon makes his 2 picks. I think that Deshaun is the number 2 quarterback on this slate.
All right, talk to me about Ezekiel Elliott. Because
nope.
Not even with Dalton back.
Nope.
I think there's an argument to be made that Zeke is a decent pick here. Because you're looking at who's left here. You have James Robinson, tough matchup. Gio, I think, is in play there. Antonio Gibson in a good spot. And then obviously Balaj too.
This might be.
I think Zeke is a part of that. I think Zeke is in that tier. Yeah.
I might have drafted the worst snake draft team of all time.
No. You got Kalen Balaj in there.
I did.
Again, it's people forget this is a double revenge game for Kalen Balaj because he gets revenge. Oh my goodness, these scores are terrible. He gets revenge himself against the Jets. But also, Anthony Lynn, their head coach, is a former assistant coach with the New York Jets. He was an assistant coach there for a bunch of years as a running backs coach. you can't turn down the double revenge. So I think the Balaj pick was right. So with my lineup, I got the game stack with Kamara and Ridley. Again, I'd feel better about that if Jameis were starting, but, whatever. I got the stack with Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller. I think that Deshaun is the number 2 quarterback on the slate behind Lamar Jackson, just because they're the 2 guys who actually have a path to upside. Henry, whatever. I don't know. Henry and Mike Davis were the 2 whatever picks. I should have taken Nick Chubb. I think that was a terrible pick on my part. Hopefully that does not come back to burn me. Let's go to JJ here. Take a look at your team. You got the stack with Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. We talked quite a bit about that game actually on Thursday, and both Brandon and I liked that one quite a bit. What put you on Herbert and Allen? Again, we're on board with you as well.
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where you guys remember a few weeks ago when the Chiefs played the Jets and people were not on that Chiefs offense because we didn't see the back and forth nature happening. But realistically, the Jets are beatable and the Chargers have a high implied team total. So you have to imagine that either to get there and to get to that point where they see the positive script, Justin Herbert's going to have something to do with that, and obviously Keenan Allen just consistently getting so much volume in that offense. There is worry, though, because what we saw last week, especially where the Chargers were in like a negative to neutral game script and they were just pounding the rock over and over and over again. And it's just very, very frustrating. But, just given the nature of this slate, I would say that in most cases, most slates that we play with this snake draft, we don't have to go with a guy like Justin Herbert. It's just we have Kyler or Russ or these other good Mahomes.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen, but they're just not on the slate. So, I think Herbert made sense as the last quarterback, and I just was able to stack him with Keenan Allen. I look at my team. I think that I was in a huge advantage this week at the 101 because not only did I get Dalvin Cook, who is the superior play this week, he's probably going to get hurt now. But the rest of my team, like every guy on my team, I actually like a lot. I didn't have any sort of like pain points while I was drafting. I mean, I'm into Aaron Jones because I think that game could end up being higher scoring than what some people might realize. I mean, it has a fairly high over-under compared to the rest of the slate, so I think that's telling enough. But then on top of that, I like Miles Sanders in the peripherals he's generally seen. Now there's no Myles Garrett. He's on the COVID list right now. So hopefully that helps the Philly matchup a little bit. And then obviously Terry McLaurin has a nice high floor each and every week. So I like my team. I don't think that, I know that I was in a way better position than you guys, and that's probably why I feel the way that I feel.
Well, I think too, we talked about 3 games on this slate that have really good pace scenarios where both teams are decently fast and there should be a lot of play volume. Those 3 games were the Chargers against the Jets, the football team against Cincinnati, and Philadelphia against Cleveland. You have players from all 3 of those games on your roster. I think this was, like you said, it was positioned well, but I think you took advantage of the opportunity given to you. Before we talk to Brandon about his lineup, do you want to announce the winner of the FanDuel Sunday Million ticket for week number 11? That goes to Joey Centrone. Joey, congratulations to you for your Sunday Million ticket. That will be emailed to you. Joey, good luck to you in the FanDuel Sunday Million. Go get yourself, I believe it's $500,000 to first place this week. So Joey, hopefully things go well for you and you can be celebrating next Friday rather than watching the snake draft. Actually, I should say there is no snake draft next week because of Thanksgiving. I don't want to work Friday at Thanksgiving. They don't want to work either. We're not going to do a snake draft. We'll be back the week after that, though, to give you more snake draft here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope channels. All right, Brandon, let's talk to you here. I think that Lamar Jackson was the correct pick. I think that you were right to take him above others because there's kind of a blob at wide receiver. There are a lot of really good options. And I think that we've used this word a couple of times, but the opportunity cost in Lamar at that point was not that high. So I like that move there for you. What do you think about your team?
I said it was probably the worst snake draft team of all time. I think it was it looks like one of the worst on paper, but I knew the drop off at pick 3 was very real. I thought maybe it would be like one of those, whenever you're torn between decisions and you flip a coin and like if you're disappointed if it landed one way. I thought I'd get that clarity at pick 3. Didn't really happen, so I just took the receivers. But I think I have a good shot at pulling in the wide receiver 1 on the slate between Devontae and Julio. I feel like I have a good shot to get the QB1 on the slate with Lamar Jackson. And then if you look at the running backs, I'm very happy with Nick Chubb because honestly, I don't view there being a huge difference between Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry most weeks. They're both just rushing dependent.
I mean, they're in the same bucket.
So I'm happy with that. I was a little disappointed not just going with Henry, but I can't really complain. And then, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, yes, he hasn't been quite the same, but the volume's been there, and Andy Dalton has been significantly better as a quarterback than Ben DiNucci and Garrett Gilbert. And then Kalen Ballage, we talked about plenty yesterday on our Heat Check podcast, but the workload's there, and they want to keep him involved. So I think I got volume at running back, and I got some upside at receiver and quarterback. So I think really the more I look at it, the better I feel.
We've had situations this year where we've been burned by Chargers running backs. I know that Joshua Kelly in an Island game was pretty popular against the Saints, and then Justin Jackson a couple of times was a value play, but none of those times did either of those backs have targets and projected goal line usage. But Kalen Ballage has, I think, 11 red zone carries the past 2 games. He has 6 inside the 10-yard line. He had 6 targets last week. So, it's a different situation. I think that's why I think Kalen Ballage, after you consider salary, is a top 3 running back on the slate for week number 11.
And Kalen Ballage, a lot of us have to shake the idea that he's just a very bad running back. He's been by far the most efficient of the Chargers running backs this year. So similar situation, way, way better than the other guys.
All right, so let's dive into here to some questions starting off over on YouTube. This one is from Joseph. We'll go with JJ here because it includes one of your, I don't know if he's still one of your favorites, but he is a guy who has been your favorite. Dallas Goedert or TJ Hawkinson this week in half PPR?
I think you got to go Hawk. He's basically like the tight end 3-ish or 4-ish in fantasy football right now. Goddard, he's seeing an uptick a little bit in his peripherals, but it's just hasn't connected really for that offense in general. I don't mind Goddard this week, but I would go with Hawkinson.
Okay, let's go to Brandon for this one because it involves one of your favorites. It's from OBP. Do you think T. Higgins has taken the wide receiver 1 role in Cincinnati? They also asked, would you evaluate him as a low-end wide receiver 1 the rest of the season? Knowing Brandon, I would say the wide receiver 1 probably for T. Higgins. That's obviously a joke, but T. Higgins is the number 1 guy in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, I think even if it's not bearing out in the market shares, specifically when you weight where he gets his targets, the amount of downfield targets he gets, that is going to be more valuable than just the targets that someone like Tyler Boyd will get. So I think he's clearly, to me, the Bengals receiver I would prefer to have. As for if he's actually a low-end wide receiver 1, I don't quite know, but I would feel very good starting. I'm starting him personally over a few other good options this week. So arrow's way up on T. Higgins for me.
I'm starting him in a couple leagues too, over palatable options for sure. Joseph is saying, thoughts on trading Jonathan Taylor for Joe Mixon, given the news from Zach Taylor today that he has no timetable for when Mixon should be back. Mixon, I don't think has practiced since week 6, which is a long time ago. The fact that he was never put on IR is kind of wild. So JJ, would you make a move for Joe Mixon when you're giving up a guy in Jonathan Taylor who you're probably not going to feel good starting anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where, if Jonathan Taylor's sitting on your bench, I think that the upside with Mixon potentially coming back at some point would be greater than Taylor, given the recent sample. But, I'll be honest, I think this is one of those questions where anything can happen, right? Mixon could just stay out the rest of the season. The Colts could just decide to use Jonathan Taylor a little bit more. And I think we all would agree that at the very least, we know that there's insane upside with Jonathan Taylor and his body of work and who he is, right? He just hasn't really shown it this year. I mean, realistically though, too, it's kind of weird. Back when Jordan Wilkins was out earlier this season, Jonathan Taylor was a really good fantasy option. And then all of a sudden he's just not because they're not using him, out of their bye. They haven't used him nearly as much. I think it just depends on your risk tolerance. I think that holding Taylor is less risky, but going after Mixon probably is the higher volatile, more upside type play.
Yeah, so it depends on where your team is at. I think that's the way to view that there. I'm going to stick with you, JJ, for this one because it's about streaming defenses. Haley is asking, how do you feel about the Browns defense with Myles Garrett being out? Now, the Browns defense has struggled all year to begin with. Now you take away Myles Garrett, but they're facing Carson Wentz, who has been very, very friendly to opposing defenses this year. So how do your thoughts change on the Browns given the Myles Garrett news?
Yeah, I mean, I still like the Browns as a streamer, not as much, but I would say, if you look at what Philly's done this season, they've allowed is there an flyover happening by one of you guys? They're very into the Cleveland Browns defense.
Yeah.
But I would say, the Eagles matchup is pretty awesome. The Eagles have been last in sack rate, or I guess worst in sack rate allowed this season. They're the 6th best matchup in terms of adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing defenses. So overall, even without Garrett, I would still feel okay enough about Cleveland, but definitely, there's a downgrade there because you need those sacks and you need that. And that's really, Myles Garrett is who's generating pressure for Cleveland right now. And without him, you might not get that.
And last year, the Browns' defensive splits with and without Myles Garrett were frightening.
Yeah.
So it was not good. But again, Carson Wentz very friendly to opposing defenses. Let's go with Lucas here. This one is for Brandon. This is for season long, but I want to get your thoughts on this for daily fantasy too. They're asking Carry-On or Adrian Peterson with DeAndre Swift being out, and would you consider either of them in daily fantasy?
I think this is one for all of us, honestly. JJ made some good points about Adrian Peterson before the show. I think it wouldn't be unrealistic for Adrian Peterson to flirt with 20 carries. It's the target share that I worry about. Kerryon Johnson, if memory serves, did outsnap Adrian Peterson 9-7 last week, for what that's worth. So I think, to me, the answer is I'd probably just feel safer with Adrian Peterson if I had to start one of them in season long. As for daily fantasy, I'm not quite there because there's still 2 of them. Adrian Peterson has not been that efficient, and I'm not sold on the idea that one of them plays even 60% of the snaps. Is probably I would assume it's going to be closer to like 50-50 down the middle, but that's my read on the situation.
What about you, JJ? How are you feeling about this Detroit backfield with DeAndre Swift being ruled out?
Yeah, I mean, from a DFS standpoint, like we all talked about, like we like Balaj more for sure, even with salary consideration, because he's more expensive than AP. But I would say, sorry, AD. But I would say, I think from a projection standpoint, like when I'm looking at projections, I would probably view Peterson in more of like the 65 to 70% running back rush share range. And if he were to see that, I think that if the right script hits, especially given the matchup against Carolina, you can see a path at least to like 15 to 20 touches on the ground and then maybe a few targets through the air. And given that, then he's going to be able to be like a decent point per dollar type player at $5,100. Now, is he going to be this like GPP winning play? Doubtful. I would rather go with like a Balaj, but I don't think having some sprinkles of Adrian Peterson is going to really destroy you this week per se, because not only that, but just given the way the slate's sort of broken down, it's not like it's not like roster construction is as easy as it was maybe a few weeks ago. So I don't mind Peterson. I probably like him a little bit more than the other guys do, but I wouldn't be going like all in by any means on him this week.
I can't give up more Kalen Balaj exposure, man. That's the hang up. The more exposure I can get to Kalen Balaj, who was cut from the Jets, what could go wrong? Question here for Brandon from OBP. Asking about T. Higgins again. Would you take T. Higgins over someone like Allen Robinson the rest of the way? Allen Robinson obviously has tremendous market shares, but also tremendous issues at quarterback. So how are you thinking about those two relative to each other the rest of the way?
I mean, I love T. Higgins, but I feel like I'd probably stick with Allen Robinson. Yeah. I don't know. It's tough because I'm trying not to be blinded by my T. Higgins love.
I think it's close, right?
Yeah, they're in the same tier, I would say. They're in the same blob at wide receiver. I'll take this one from Bethany. What about Taysom Hill in my quarterback slot? I was going to play Jameis, got the Josh Allen bye blues. So, Bethany, we were talking before about Phillip Rivers. I had Jameis Winston as my quarterback in a Yahoo league where I can't play Taysom Hill at tight end. I had picked up Phillip Rivers when they said that Jameis wasn't going to start, thought about it more. I picked up Taysom Hill, and I am going to use him at quarterback because of the rushing value, because there are multiple ways he can score points. So I actually am going to use Taysom Hill at quarterback in like a Yahoo league or wherever where you can't use him elsewhere. Am I off base in doing that, JJ? Like, is that an okay move to use Taysom as a quarterback in a quarterback-only league?
I mean, so my take is I hope that we learn a little bit more over the next 24 hours and before Sunday actually happens. usually we get some sort of news dump on Sunday morning, late Saturday night. And hopefully that can
bombs, yeah.
And hopefully that can dictate, your decision making a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, right now, the information that we have, it sounds like we're going to see a lot of Taysom Hill under center. So I can understand if you want to go that direction. And like I said earlier, I think that the production that we're going to see from Taysom Hill is going to look a lot like that final line is going to look a lot like what we saw from Tim Tebow back in the day and the way that he operated his offenses.
Or have seen from Cam Newton this year, because Cam is actually
Cam Newton's probably the better comp, honestly. Yeah, I just like going with the Tim Tebow one. Because
Cam's a better passer than Taysom Hill, but like the way they get their points will be similar.
Yeah, right. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so final one here. This one is going to Brandon. One-Eyed Jack Productions. You're not going to say either in this. Turkey or ham for the Thanksgiving dinner? You're a vegetarian, so obviously you're picking neither. But before you were a vegetarian, could you tolerate either, or is it just total pass on all Thanksgiving food?
Just pass. Just get pizza for Thanksgiving.
Did you say stuffing?
Pizza.
Oh, get pizza for Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fine take, 'cause it's pizza. JJ, turkey or ham for Thanksgiving?
Turkey all day.
Green bean casserole is actually the correct answer. So, that's just, got to go with the optimal thing here. Ben is saying 12 carries, 36 yards, 2 touchdowns, Vulture from Kamara. Ben, I hope not, because I have Kamara on my snake draft team. That is all the time that we have for today. Next week, because of Thanksgiving, apparently One-Eyed Jack says you're brilliant, Brandon. So you've won One-Eyed Jack over for the pizza on Thanksgiving. Right. Honestly, I can't hate on it. Next week, we'll still have our Tuesday waiver wire stream with myself and JJ. That is at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll also have JJ on Sunday for the Start Sit show. That is both this Sunday and the following Sunday. The only show being lopped off because of the holiday will be the snake draft on Friday. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page, also on Facebook, Periscope, and Twitch to ask those questions on Sunday at 4 JJ noon Eastern to get those season-long teams set. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. Thank you to Brandon and JJ for joining me here for today. I am Jim Saunders saying so long for today. Thank you for tuning into our snake draft, and good luck with your season-long DFS and Dynasty teams in week number 11.